The steady beep of the heart monitor had become background noise, a cold mechanical soundtrack to the last 3 hours of my life. I sat there in that stiff plastic chair, the kind hospitals buy in bulk, holding Martha Henderson's frail hand in mine. Her skin felt papery translucent, like a leaf left too long in the sun. The room smelled of antiseptic and the faint decay of the wilted flowers someone had brought days ago. The air itself seemed to sag heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Martha's chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. At 78, she'd fought harder than most would have in her condition, dementia gnawing at her mind for the past 2 years. But her spirit, fierce and unyielding, had clung on. Until tonight, Lucas. She rasped, her voice barely a whisper. I leaned in, straining to catch every word. Her eyes, milky and tired, snapped open with sudden clarity, clearer than I'd seen them in weeks. They locked onto mine, sharp and urgent. You were always good to me, better than my own daughter. Save your strength, Martha. I murmured, my throat tight. I wasn't ready for goodbye. Not yet, no, she said firmly, her hand tightening around mine with surprising strength. Listen to me, the nurse has something for you. A letter. Don't let Bree see it first. Promise me. I hesitated, my stomach nodding. The way she said my wife's name, Brianna Voss, wasn't just strained with illness. It was laced with something darker, fear. I promise, I whispered. Her breath rattled, catching in her throat like the last gasp of a dying fire. Tell her. Tell her I knew. Her grip slackened, her hand slipping from mine like a dropped photograph. The monitor let out a long, unbroken tone. Flat line. The final, merciless punctuation of life. I didn't call for help, not at first. I sat there staring at the woman who had been the closest thing I'd ever had to a mother. Outside the window, the October sky hung low and gray over Portland, the city humming in the distance. Life moving on indifferent. Families talking, children crying somewhere, a nurse laughing at a joke. Dr. Patterson entered quietly, a clipboard tucked under his arm, face solemn like he'd practiced it in a mirror. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Grant. Time of death, 4:47 p.m. I nodded, numb. My knees ached when I stood too long sitting in that damn chair. I kissed Martha's forehead, whispered a thank you. She could no longer hear, and walked out. The nurse at the door, Janet, her badge said, held out an envelope, thick and heavy. My name was scrawled across the front in Martha's shaky handwriting. She wanted you to have this. She was very specific. I took it, my fingers tingling as I tucked it into my jacket pocket. Thank you. Janet nodded and disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone with the dead and the dying. I didn't open the envelope in the hospital or in the parking garage where the rain was beginning to spit against the windshield of my truck, not even when I sat in traffic on I-84 staring blankly at brake lights and wondering how the hell life had unraveled so fast. I didn't open it until I was home, sitting in my dimly lit kitchen with a beer growing warm on the counter and the silence pressing in like a heavy blanket. When I finally tore the seal, the contents spilled out onto the table, a single sheet of paper, a brass key, and 3 photographs. The letter was short. Martha's handwriting, though shaky, was unmistakable. Lucas, if you're reading this, she's finally done it. Go to the garden shed. Trust no one, especially Bry. The key opens everything you need to know. Below that in block letters were 3 names: Lennox Carr, Margot Hurst, Roland Griggs. The names sat on the page like coiled snakes. I knew one Lennox. He worked at the same insurance firm as Bry. The man she said was just a colleague. The other 2 were strangers. I flipped the photographs over, my pulse quickening. The first showed Brianna walking into a downtown restaurant arm in arm with Lennox, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. The second was a bank statement with red circles drawn around numbers that didn't make sense. Transfers, dates, signatures. The third was blurry, grainy, like it had been taken from a distance. 2 figures meeting on a park bench, faces obscured. My phone buzzed, jolting me back. A text from Bree running late. Don't wait up. The same message she'd sent 3 times this week. I sat there long after the beer had gone flat, the letter, photos, and key laid out on the table like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was trying to solve. The words in Martha's letter burned into my mind. Trust no one, especially Bree. When I finally went to bed, I lay staring at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. In the dark, the house creaked and shifted around me, the wind tapping at the windows like ghostly fingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And somewhere out in the city lights, Bree was smiling at someone else. The rain started again as I pulled into the driveway, the kind of Portland drizzle that seeped into your clothes no matter how fast you moved. The house looked the same as it always did, white siding, blue shutters, a porch light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to give out or hang on. but it felt different now, like the walls themselves were holding a secret they were too scared to tell. I didn't bother taking off my coat. The key in my pocket felt heavier than it had any right to. My boots thudded across the hardwood floor as I made my way to the back door out into the yard and toward the garden shed at the edge of the property. That shed. I'd helped Martha clean it out last spring when she'd been having one of her good days, lucid, sharp-eyed, bossy as ever. I remembered her fussing about some old boxes, telling me not to peek, asking me to put them on the top shelf where no one would find them. I hadn't thought much of it then, just the quirks of an old woman trying to hold on to what little control she had left. But now the memory gnawed at me. I reached the shed and hesitated. The lock was old, rusted around the edges, the kind of thing you'd see on a storage unit at a flea market. The key slid in easily, a perfect fit, like it had been waiting all this time for me to find it. I turned it, heard the click, and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, earthy damp, tinged with the sharpness of fertilizer, and something else, something metallic and faintly sour. The single bulb overhead flickered when I pulled the cord, throwing long shadows across the clutter, gardening tools, bags of potting soil, an old bike, a cracked bird bath. But in the back, tucked behind a stack of mulch, was a small metal box about the size of a toolbox. It was locked too, but the brass key worked here as well. The lid creaked open, and inside I found a stack of photographs, a sealed envelope, and a flash drive taped to the bottom. I sat down on the workbench, the weight of what I was holding settling in. My hands shook as I peeled the tape off the flash drive and pocketed it. The envelope was addressed to me, my name written in Martha's careful, deliberate handwriting, more steady than the letter from the hospital. She must have written this earlier, before the dementia stole her penmanship. I opened it, half expecting another cryptic message, but it was just one line: Lucas, trust your instincts. Everything you need is here. Don't let her take it from you. I looked at the photographs. The first one made my stomach turn. It was Brianna, my wife, in bed, with Lennox's car. The image was grainy, taken through a window, but there was no mistaking it. The timestamp at the bottom corner, 6 months ago. 6 months. That would have been right around the time she told me she was working late on a big project. The second photo showed a stack of legal documents spread across a table. Power of attorney forms, bank authorizations, my signature. But I hadn't signed these. The signature was close, almost perfect, but the G in Grant was too rounded, the tail too short. A forgery. The third photo was of Brianna and a woman I didn't recognize. Later, I'd learn her name was Margot Hurst. They were standing outside a coffee shop, shaking hands, smiling like they'd just closed a deal that would change both their lives. A ruined mine. I felt cold all over, like the air in the shed had dropped 10 degrees. My breath fogged in front of me. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry, scratchy, like sandpaper. I took the flash drive inside, plugged it into my laptop, and clicked the first video. Martha's face filled the screen, looking more alive than I'd seen her in months. She sat at a small table, probably right there in the garden shed, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. Lucas, if you're watching this, I'm gone, she said, her voice steady, her tone the same no-nonsense I'd always known. I started making these videos a few months back after I caught Bri going through my papers. At first, I thought she was helping me, being a good daughter. But then I noticed things going missing. Copies of my will, bank statements, your information. That's when I knew. She's not just trying to help Lucas. She's trying to take everything. The video jumped slightly as she adjusted the camera, her fingers pale and bony. I hired a private investigator. It cost me a lot, but it was worth it. Bree and Lennox, they're having an affair. Been going on for at least 8 months. He's got gambling debts. She's been helping him cover them, and they're planning something big. I think they're forging your signature, Lucas. I think they're going to try to take your benefits, your pension, maybe even the house. She leaned in, her eyes fierce. Don't trust her. Don't trust anyone. The screen went dark. My laptop's cooling fan hummed in the silence. I sat there staring at the black screen, feeling the walls of my life close in around me. The woman I trusted, the woman I'd loved for 10 years, was plotting to take everything I had left, and maybe more than that. I glanced down at the photographs in my lap, the brass key, the envelope, the flash drive. They felt like pieces of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. But I didn't have a choice anymore. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a bad dream. This was real. And I wasn't about to let her win. If you find it interesting, please give me a subscription. Thank you very much. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, the glow of the laptop screen burning my eyes, while I replayed Martha's videos over and over until her voice became the only sound in the room. My mind wouldn't shut off, couldn't shut off. The dots started connecting in ways that made me sick. The work dinners, the late nights at the office, the bank statements, I hadn't paid much attention to the coldness in Bree's eyes when I asked about them. By the time the sky outside lightened into a pale, miserable gray, I had a plan. I left the house just after 7, the streets of Portland, damp and slick from the overnight rain. My truck's wipers scraped across the windshield, a steady rhythm that matched the dull thud of my pulse in my ears. I parked across the street from the Mountain View Insurance Building and waited sipping black coffee from a paper cup until the caffeine settled like grit in my stomach. At 8:15 sharp, Brianna walked out the front doors. She was dressed for the part, blazer skirt, heels that clicked sharply against the pavement, but to me she looked like a stranger. A woman I'd once known in photographs. Her smile was a lie. Her eyes darted across the street, but she didn't see me. Or maybe she wasn't looking. She was too focused on the man beside her. Lennox Carr. He was tall, lean, in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. His posture oozed the kind of smug confidence that made me want to break his nose on principle. They were close. Too close. Bree reached out, touched his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. They laughed at something private, something ours, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. I snapped a picture through the windshield. They walked together to a little cafe on Burnside, the kind of place with overpriced pastries and hipster baristas. I parked down the block and followed on foot, keeping my distance, watching through the window as they sat at a corner table, their heads bent close. I took another photo, zooming in. Bree was holding Lennox's hand across the table. When had that started? How long had I been the fool I didn't go inside? I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more than a confrontation in a coffee shop. I needed proof, so I followed. When Bree left for the office, Lennox stayed behind. He looked nervous, twitchy, checking his phone like he was waiting for someone else. I waited too. 5 minutes later, a man I didn't recognize walked in, big with a shaved head and prison tattoos creeping up his neck. They shook hands, sat at the bar, and talked low. I slid into a booth nearby, ears straining to catch their conversation. "You said the paperwork's in place," the tattooed man said, his voice gravelly. "It is," Lennox replied. "The husband's almost out of the picture. Bree's working the mental health angle, PTSD and instability. Once she gets him committed, we can finalize the transfers. The rest is just cleanup." The tattooed man nodded slowly. "What if he doesn't go quietly?" Lennox sipped his coffee, smirking. "Then we help him along. Accidents happen, especially to drunk vets with a history of violence." My stomach turned. They were planning to kill me, or at least make it look like I'd gone off the rails one too many bad days, one too many drinks. Maybe an unregistered gun left lying around when the wrong cop showed up. I clenched my fists under the table nails, digging into my palms. My breathing felt ragged, like I was sucking in broken glass. They stood, shook hands, and parted ways. Lennox left first, disappearing down the street toward a parking garage. The other guy lingered a moment, scanning the room like he could smell a rat. I stayed perfectly still until he was gone. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photos and the recording I'd secretly captured on my phone. It wasn't enough yet. It was a start, but if I went to the police with just this, Bree would spin it like I was paranoid, mentally unstable, a bitter husband making wild accusations because his marriage was falling apart. No, I needed more. I needed someone who could help me take this whole mess down. I called Alec Reeve. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy like he'd just woken up. "Lucas, what's going on? I need your help," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Is everything okay?" "No, not even close. Alec, they're planning something. Bree, Lennox, a woman named Margot Hurst. They're going to frame me and take everything I've got, maybe even kill me." There was a long pause. "Lucas," he said carefully, have you been drinking?" "No," I snapped. "I'm not crazy, Alec. I have photos, videos, bank records. I know what I'm talking about." I could hear the hesitation in his silence, the way he was processing whether to believe me or not, whether I was the friend he'd known for years or the broken man everyone thought I'd become. "I need you to meet with Lennox," I said, forcing the words out. "Pretend you're interested in whatever scheme they're running. Get him talking. I'll wire you up. We'll get proof." Alec exhaled slowly. "Lucas, that's risky as hell. You're asking me to walk into a lion's den." "I know, but I need someone I can trust." More silence. Finally, he sighed. "All right, tell me where and when." Relief flooded through me, shaky and raw. "Thank you." I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My face looked older than I remembered, tired, lined with a kind of hollow anger that made my hands shake. They thought they could destroy me. They were wrong. 2 days later, I sat in the parking lot of Murphy's Bar, watching Alec Reeves step inside. My pulse thudded in my ears, every nerve in my body strung tight like piano wire. The little digital recorder I'd taped under Alec's shirt had been tested 3 times, and I drilled him on what to say, what questions to ask, what not to do. But none of that eased the sick weight in my gut as I watched him disappear into the dim, smoky interior of that place. Murphy's was the kind of bar where the lights stayed low for a reason, where guys with nothing to lose came to make deals that couldn't see daylight. I'd been there a few times after deployments back when the weight of everything I'd seen overseas was still pressing down on my chest like a goddamn elephant. I knew the smell stale beer, sweat, regret, and tonight it smelled like trouble. I sat in my truck across the street, headphones in, listening through the wire as Alec approached Lennox's car. "Hey man," Alec said, his voice casual, maybe a little too casual. "Heard through the grapevine you've got a little opportunity going. I'm in a tight spot and, well, I could use something like that. You know, a quick win." For a second, there was nothing but the muffled clink of glasses and the low hum of a football game on the TV. Then Lennox spoke, his voice slick, too smooth for a man in as much trouble as I knew he was in. "Who told you that?" Alec let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, man. Portland's a small town. Word gets around. Look, I'm not looking to cause any problems. Just heard there's a way to make some cash. I've got a custody hearing coming up. Legal fees, you know how it is." The silence stretched just long enough to make my stomach flip. Then Lennox exhaled like he was deciding to let Alec into the club. All right, all right. Yeah, there's something in the works." He lowered his voice and I had to crank the volume on the headphones. "See, my girl Bree, she's married to this guy. Ex-military, real messed up in the head. PTSD, anger issues, the whole 9 yards. She's been laying the groundwork for months. Doctor's notes, therapy sessions, building a case. Once we get the paperwork in, she gets to control the accounts, the assets, everything." Alec played his part perfectly. "Damn, that's cold, man." Lennox laughed, and it was a sound that made my skin crawl. "You don't get rich playing nice. And if the guy doesn't snap on his own, well, accidents happen. Drunk vet gun in the house, history of violence. You connect the dots." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath came in ragged bursts, rage bubbling up, so hot I felt lightheaded. "And the money?" Alec asked, his voice a little tighter now. "That's the beauty of it," Lennox said, his tone smug. "We wash it all through the charity. Margot runs the books, makes it look clean. Once it's laundered, it's untouchable. I get my cut. Bree gets hers, and our friend Griggs, well, he takes care of any loose ends." Loose ends. That's what I was now. A loose end. Alec cleared his throat. "And if someone starts asking questions," Lennox's voice dropped so low I could barely make it out, "then Griggs makes them stop asking. Simple as that." The conversation drifted to football scores, bar chatter, the clink of glasses. I sat back in my seat, shaking. I had them. I finally had them. Alec texted me a single word as he left the bar, "Done." When he got in my truck, he looked pale, like he'd just seen a ghost. He peeled off the wire with trembling hands. "Jesus, Lucas. They're talking like they've already buried you." I nodded grimly. "Yeah, that's because they think they have." We drove in silence for a while, the rain beating a steady rhythm on the windshield. Alec was quiet, staring out at the wet streets, his profile tight with guilt. "You were right," he finally muttered. "I didn't want to believe it, but you were right. That's the thing about the truth," I said, my voice low. "It doesn't care whether you're ready for it." Back at my place, I played the recording again. Headphones on, volume cranked. Every word Lennox said cut deeper than the last, but it also sharpened my focus. This was bigger than a cheating wife. Bigger than a couple of dirty bank transfers. They had a whole damn system: fraud, forgery, intimidation, murder for hire. And they thought they could silence me. I spent the next few hours backing up the file, saving it to 3 different flash drives, uploading it to cloud storage. 1 copy went in my safe. 1 went in a lockbox at the bank. The 3rd I sealed in an envelope addressed to Tessa Lynn at the Portland Chronicle. Let them try to make me disappear. Let them come. I wasn't going down quietly. I was going to burn them all down. The next morning, I drove across town to the Portland Chronicle building, gripping the envelope so tight the edges crumpled in my hands. Tessa Lynn's office was on the 2nd floor, tucked behind a wall of chaotic bulletin boards and a desk that looked like it had been swallowed by case files, empty coffee cups, and half-finished legal pads. She was exactly how I remembered her from high school. Sharp eyes, quick hands, a no-bullshit air about her like she'd been born for deadlines and truth bombs. When she looked up and saw me standing there, her expression flickered from surprise to curiosity. "Lucas Grant," she said, pushing her glasses up on her nose. "Long time. Heard about Martha." "I'm sorry. Thanks," I said, voice tight. I handed her the envelope. "I think I've got something bigger than condolences." Tessa opened it, spreading out the photos, the flash drive, the documents, like pieces of a crime scene puzzle. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the forged signatures, the timestamps on the photos, the tangled web of bank transfers. "You mind explaining what I'm looking at here?" she asked, her tone measured, but laced with something sharper underneath. I told her everything. From the moment I got that letter from Martha at the hospital to the garden shed to the surveillance I'd been doing to Alex's wiretap at Murphy's. I laid it all out: Brianna's affair with Lennox, the forged documents, the siphoning of Martha's accounts, the shell charity Margot Hurst was using to launder the money, and the plan to have me declared mentally incompetent. Or worse. Tessa didn't interrupt much, just asked pointed questions here and there, dates, names, specifics, scribbling furious notes as I spoke. When I finished, the room felt heavy, like the weight of the story was pressing in from the walls. "Jesus Christ, Lucas," she muttered, shaking her head. "This is a damn conspiracy." "No kidding. I'll need to verify everything that she said," flipping through the documents again. "These photos, the audio file, the financial records, they're solid, but they're not enough for a story yet. If I'm going to put this out there, I need more. I need to confirm sources, get statements, dig into their backgrounds." I expected that. Tessa wasn't the type to run with a half-formed lead. "I've got a name you can start with," I said. "Imama Henderson, Martha's niece. She's in Sacramento. I think she's the one Martha updated her will to favor." She had no idea any of this was happening. Tessa's eyebrows shot up. "You think Brianna knew about the will change? I'd bet my life on it. Hell, I am betting my life on it." She nodded, her mind already a few steps ahead. "I'll reach out to Emma. And this Margot Hurst, if she's running a fake charity, I'll dig into that too. IRS records, 1990s public filings. Shouldn't be hard to find the cracks." As she spoke, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face tightening. "One sec," she answered, turning slightly away. "Yeah, Tessa here." "Uh-huh. Wait, what? You're sure?" Her voice sharpened, the reporter instincts fully kicked in. She scribbled something fast, then hung up and looked at me, eyes wide. "That was a friend in the court clerk's office. Brianna Voss isn't who she says she is." I sat up straighter, my heart pounding. "Her real name is Shayla Voss. She was adopted when she was 16 after a juvenile record for elder abuse and theft. Charges were dropped after she went through a rehab program and got placed with a foster family, the Thorns. It was all sealed, but my contact owed me a favor." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Martha had been right all along. "There's more." Tessa continued, flipping through another file she had grabbed. 3 years ago, Martha sent a letter to the adoption agency warning them that Shayla Brianna was showing the same manipulative patterns targeting vulnerable elderly. "It's all there, Lucas." Martha tried to raise the alarm, but no one listened. They dismissed her as a paranoid old woman. Rage bubbled in my chest, hot and blinding. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Tessa looked up at me, her expression tight, fierce. "This isn't just a domestic dispute, Lucas. This is a full-blown fraud and elder abuse case. And if you're right about the murder angle, it's going to blow up big." "I don't care about big," I said, my voice low and shaking. "I care about stopping them before they try to finish what they started." Tessa nodded, her pen tapping on the desk. "Give me a week. 2 at most. I'll verify everything. And when I do, we'll hit them hard. Front page, full spread. We'll burn their whole damn world down." As I left her office, the rain was still falling, steady and cold. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Brianna. "Hey, love, I'm working late again tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the screen, my stomach churning, and deleted the message without replying. The pieces were finally clicking into place. They thought I was weak. They thought I was broken. They had no idea what was coming. The house smelled like Chinese takeout when I walked in. The scent of orange chicken and fried rice drifted through the air, mixing with the low hum of the dishwasher and the clink of silverware being set on the table. For a second, just a second, it felt like an ordinary night. Like maybe I could shake this nightmare off and go back to the way things were before. But the brass key in my pocket dug into my thigh like a blade, a reminder of the truth I couldn't unsee. Brianna was at the kitchen island, unpacking the cartons, her hair tucked behind one ear, a soft smile playing on her lips like she hadn't spent the last 8 months plotting to dismantle my life. She wore a cream blouse and jeans, casual. Comfortable, the uniform of a woman who wanted to look effortless while she calculated your downfall. "Hey, babe," she said brightly, looking up at me. Rough day, I stared at her, my jaw tight, the weight of everything I knew pressing down on my chest. Yeah, I said, voice flat. Rough day. You okay? She came closer, reaching for my arm. Her touch, light, almost tender. A performance. I knew that now. I pulled away, stepping back toward the table where I'd left the envelope from Tessa earlier. The edges were frayed, the corners bent from how many times I'd opened and closed it, studying its contents like a war map. We need to talk, I said. Bree's smile faltered just a flicker, but it was there. She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter like she had all the time in the world. About what I pulled out, the photographs, the ones of her and Lennox holding hands, laughing outside that downtown restaurant. I laid them on the table one by one each, an accusation, each a knife. Then came the forged documents, the power of attorney forms with my signature, the bank statements showing the transfers to Margot Hurst's charity. Her face went still, not shocked, not even surprised. Just cold. Where did you get these? She asked, her voice low even. Does it matter? I said, my own voice barely above a whisper. My heart was thudding so loud I could feel it in my teeth. It's over, Bri. I know everything. She exhaled slow and measured like she was considering her next move on a chessboard. Lucas, she started, her tone soft coaxing like she was talking to a skittish animal. I think you need to take a breath. All this stress, it's not good for you. You know how your mind works when you get overwhelmed? The nightmares, the anger, the drinking. There it was, the manipulation slick as oil. Don't I snap, stepping forward, my fists clenched. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. Her eyes hardened. The mask slipped just for a second, and I saw the real Brianna, the calculating, ruthless woman beneath the surface. She smiled slow and dangerous. You're not well, Lucas. Everyone knows that. Alex worried. Hell, I'm worried. You've been acting paranoid for months. Maybe we should call someone. Get you some help. She was laying the groundwork just like Lennox had said. The mental health angle. The concerned wife. I shook my head, rage simmering just under my skin. No, not this time. You're not getting away with it. Then I heard it, a soft click behind me. A door opening. I turned and there he was. Roland Griggs. Big, broad-shouldered, a scar down his left cheek. He wore a black leather jacket, a gray t-shirt stretched across his chest, and the unmistakable bulge of a holstered weapon under his coat. His eyes locked on mine and a slow, shark-like grin spread across his face. Evening, Mr. Grant, he said like we were old friends. His voice was smooth, practiced. Mind if I come in? I didn't answer. My pulse spiked, a surge of adrenaline kicking in, fight or flight. My instincts from the army, the ones I hadn't needed in years, snapped back into place like a switch flipped. Brianna stepped to the side, letting him in, her arms crossed like this was just another step in her plan. Griggs moved closer, his posture loose but coiled like he was waiting for the right moment to strike. We just want to have a little chat, he said, his tone oozing false calm. Sign a few papers. Make sure everybody stays happy. And if I say no, my voice was steady, colder than I felt inside. Griggs's grin sharpened. Then we make it. Harder for you. I didn't wait. I lunged forward faster than either of them expected. My shoulder crashed into Griggs's chest, driving him back into the wall. He grunted, reaching for the gun, but I slammed my elbow into his jaw, then grabbed for the weapon, my fingers scrabbling against the leather. Bree screamed, sharp, high-pitched, but I barely heard her over the pounding in my ears. Griggs swung at me, a fist like a hammer, catching my ribs. But I twisted, using his weight against him, slamming him down onto the dining table with a crash that sent takeout containers flying. The gun skittered across the floor. I dove for it, fingers scraping across the hardwood. Griggs lunged after me, but I got there first. I snatched the gun, rolled onto my back, and leveled it at his chest. Don't, I warned, my voice low, steady. Griggs froze, hands raised slightly. His lip was bleeding, eyes furious. Bree stood in the corner, her breath, ragged tears streaking down her cheeks. But there was no remorse in her eyes, just calculation, cold and sharp. It's over, I said to her, my breath coming in ragged bursts. You lost. Her lips curled into a bitter, defiant sneer. You think this is over, Lucas? You're just a broken man with a gun. No one's going to believe you. I looked at her, and in that moment I knew exactly what I had to do. I zip-tied Griggs's hands behind his back, then did the same to Brianna, ignoring her protests and curses. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and pointed it at her. Start talking, I said, my voice hard as steel, because when the cops get here, I'm going to have everything they need. Bree glared at me, her jaw clenched tight, but I could see it in her eyes, fear, real fear. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I wasn't letting go. The courthouse was packed. The scent of stale coffee, old wood, and too many bodies crammed into one room hung heavy in the air. Reporters filled the back rows, their notepads flipping, cameras clicking softly every time the door opened. I sat in the front row, my fists clenched so tight in my lap that my knuckles had gone white. The walls of the Multnomah County Courthouse seemed to lean in the fluorescent lights, humming like a swarm of angry bees. Across the aisle, Brianna sat at the defense table, her hair pinned back. Her makeup understated an image carefully crafted to project innocence. Her expression was neutral, but every now and then her eyes would flicker to me, sharp and calculating, like a snake in the grass waiting for a chance to strike. Lennox Carr sat next to her, looking pale and hollowed out. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched, as if trying to disappear into his expensive suit. Margot Hurst was there too, in a navy blazer, her mouth-tight, hands folded primly in front of her. And Griggs, he looked like a caged animal scowling at everyone who got too close. The prosecution laid it all out methodically, relentlessly. The audio recordings Alec had captured at Murphy's, the videos from Martha's garden shed, the photographs of Brianna and Lennox, together the forged documents. Tessa Lynn's investigative article had already set the media ablaze, and now the courtroom buzzed with the weight of it all. Emma Henderson took the stand, her voice shaking as she read aloud from Martha's letters, the ones warning about Brianna's manipulations, her fears of being poisoned, her desperate attempts to protect what little she had left. The jury sat in rapt silence, some of them glancing at Brianna with thinly veiled disgust. Then it was my turn. I stood and took the oath. The courtroom hushed around me. The weight of every eye in the room settled on my shoulders, but I felt light, unburdened. I told them everything. How Martha had handed me that envelope on her deathbed, how I'd followed the trail she left behind, how I'd uncovered the affair, the fraud, the scheme to declare me mentally incompetent and drain every cent from my accounts. I trusted her, I said, my voice catching. I loved her. For 10 years I believed in her, and she used that trust as a weapon. Brianna watched me, her face an unreadable mask, but I could see the cracks now, the tight line of her mouth, the way her hands clenched and unclenched in her lap, the darting of her eyes when the evidence piled too high for her to dismiss. The prosecutor turned to me, her voice calm but sharp. Mr. Chaswayam, Grant, do you believe your wife and her accomplices were responsible for your mother-in-law's death? I stared at Brianna across the room, my throat tight, my heart pounding like a drum. Yes, I said. I believe they killed her. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Brianna's lawyer objected, but the prosecutor moved on, weaving the case tighter, brick by brick. Lennox took the stand next, cutting a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. His voice was hollow, broken, as he admitted to everything: the affair, the forged signatures, the plan to frame me, the money laundering scheme through Margot's charity. It was all Brianna's idea, he said, his gaze darting to her like a man who knew the price of betrayal. She said if I helped her, we'd be rich. Said no one would believe him, Lucas, that he was damaged. Easy to push over the edge. The jury's eyes shifted to Brianna, cold and hard. She sat, rigid, lips pressed into a thin line, her hands white-knuckled on the table. Margot tried to spin it that she didn't know where the money was coming from, that she thought it was legitimate donations, but the paper trail Tessa had dug up told a different story. Griggs, when his turn came, slumped in the witness box, deflated and beaten. He admitted he'd been hired to intimidate me, to make it look like an accident if I pushed too far. Then Brianna took the stand. For 3 days she wept and pleaded, painting herself as a victim manipulated by Lennox, terrified of Griggs grieving her mother's death. She claimed she never intended to hurt anyone, that she had tried to protect me from myself. The prosecutor played the recording from our kitchen, the one where she'd threatened me, where she said I should have just accepted the story. Her voice, so cold and sharp, filled the courtroom. The jury watched her crumble, her lies laid bare. When the verdict came, it was swift and final. Guilty on all counts: fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit murder. The judge's gavel slammed down, her voice ringing clear. Brianna Voss, you are hereby sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Lennox Carr, 12 years. Margot Hurst, 15 years with restitution. Roland Griggs, 8 years. Brianna's eyes locked on mine as the bailiff cuffed her hands, her face pale hollow. I held her gaze for a long moment, long enough for her to see that I wasn't the man she thought she could break. Then I turned away. I stepped into the bright Oregon afternoon, the air crisp and cool, the sun breaking through the clouds in streaks of gold. For the first time in months, I could breathe. It wasn't over, not completely. Some wounds don't heal clean, but the weight on my chest had lifted. I'd fought for the truth and I'd won. No one could take that from me. 6 months later, the house was quiet. Not the kind of empty, heavy quiet it had been in the aftermath. The tense, holding your breath kind of quiet when every creak of the floorboards made me think someone was coming to finish what they'd started. This was a different kind of quiet. Peaceful. I stood in the backyard, the air crisp with the early spring chill, the scent of damp earth and blooming daffodils lingering in the breeze. The garden shed, Martha's garden shed, stood at the edge of the yard, its door now repainted, the lock, replaced, the secrets it once held finally laid to rest. The brass key hung from a hook in my kitchen, now a reminder of what had been hidden in the shadows and of the strength it had taken to drag it into the light. Lenny, the golden retriever I'd inherited along with Martha's house, lay at my feet, his tail thumping softly against the grass. He was 12, a little slower than he used to be, but he still followed me everywhere, like he knew we'd both been through hell and come out the other side. I knelt down, scratching behind his ears. "What do you think, boy? Pretty good spot for a fresh start, huh?" His tail wagged harder, and for a moment the weight in my chest eased. A letter from Emma Henderson had arrived the week before. A simple thank you card, her handwriting neat and careful, telling me how much it meant to her that Martha had thought of her, how she was using the inheritance to set up a scholarship fund in Martha's name. She'd invited me to visit Sacramento, but I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Tessa had sent another email too, and offered to co-write a book about the case, about the conspiracy, about what it meant to stand your ground when the world tried to erase you. I told her no. I didn't need the world to know my story. It was mine, and I was keeping it. The sun slipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. I picked up the pile of old photos I'd been meaning to go through, wedding pictures of me and Brea family holidays, blurry shots of us smiling into the camera. I fed them one by one into a metal trash can I dragged out onto the patio. The edges curled black and crumbled to ash. Smoke rose into the air, the past burning away in tiny weightless pieces. I watched the flames until they died down, leaving only glowing embers. Brianna would be 64 when she got out if she served her full sentence. By then I'd be an old man with a quiet life and a dog who hopefully still had a few years left in him. And when she stepped back into the world, she'd find there was nothing left for her here. No home, no money, no me. I glanced down at Lenny, who rested his head on my boot, his eyes half closed. We were survivors, him and me, and we were free. Every Sunday I brought flowers to Martha's grave. Daffodils when I could find them, her favorite. Sometimes I'd sit for an hour talking to her like she was still there. I told her about the garden, about Lenny's antics, about the quiet peace that had finally found its way back into my life. I always thanked her too, for the key, for the courage, for the love that had made her fight for me even in the end. And every time I walked away from her headstone, I felt lighter. This house wasn't haunted anymore. It wasn't a prison, a stage for a slow, careful murder. It was a home. Mine. The brass key still hung in the kitchen, a little worn, a little tarnished. I left it there on purpose. A reminder that the things we lock away have a way of clawing their way back into the light if we let them. I'd let the truth out. And in the end, that had been enough. I was alone now, yes, but I wasn't blind anymore. And I wasn't broken. I was alive, free, and finally at peace.